America's involvement in the Vietnam War ended with little fanfare for those who fought it. The legacy is this powerful memorial that asks we reflect on more than 58,000 lives lost in America's most divisive conflict. We're going back to 1975. That was the end of the Vietnam War, April 30th. I'm Tom Shad. Thank you for joining us in a special edition of History Through the Lens. We're actually at the Virginia Beach Convention Center, and behind me is a replica of the Vietnam Memorial called the Moving Wall. This goes all over the country, and we see people coming in here at the Convention Center before Veterans Day and paying tribute to those who have died in the Vietnam conflict. America was a different country then. We saw a lot of problems in our nation. We were healing from Watergate in 1975. We were seeing the beginning of something called stagflation in our economy, and we were still carrying very, very bitter memories of the Vietnam War that had just ended in April of that year. And joining me now is Dan Doyle. He is the president of the Hampton Roads Council of Veterans Organizations, part of this group getting the Vietnam Memorial here, the Moving Wall, here to the Convention Center. Thank you for joining me today.
Sir, my pleasure.
We're going to talk about this incredible experience that people witness when they come here, and also the time. 1975, your father was a Vietnam veteran.
Yes, sir.
And can you tell me just a little bit about you and your organization first off?
HRCVO, the Hampton Roads Council of Veterans Organizations, is an umbrella group. We're made up of about 80 different veteran service organizations, patriotic groups, civic groups, and others who have an expressed interest in patriotism and celebrating Veterans Day. Our one job every year, our mission, is to put on the best Veterans Day parade that we can. In fact, this parade, this organization in the parade has been recognized the past 14 years by the Veterans Administration as a regional site for all Veterans Day parades. We're the only one in the state that has that designation. We're very proud of that. So,
as you should be.
It's an excellent opportunity to come out and celebrate and honor the veterans of all wars. So 59 years ago, President Dwight D. Eisenhower signed the proclamation that made Veterans Day a celebration of all veterans instead of just when it was originally conceived as one that focused on World War I and Armistice Day.
That's right.
So it was expanded to include all veterans from all wars. And that's what we're celebrating these days, is a tribute to all veterans from all wars, American wars.
Perfect. This one being, though, a special emphasis on the end of the Vietnam conflict, and
Correct.
Of course what it means to America even today as we see people coming through here. It's about 1 o'clock in the afternoon on November the 10th as of this taping. So when this airs, when this goes onto our Wavy Plus app, the traveling wall will be gone from the convention center and on to its next location.
Yes, sir.
That's a good place to start about the moving wall. Excuse me, it's the moving wall, not the traveling wall, because there are different replicas. So we want to get that right. This one was made in 1984.
That's correct.
Can you tell me about the background of this moving wall and how it came to be?
There are 3 or 4 of them that are moving or traveling, but this is a half-size replica. There are 3 of those. There's one that's a 3/4 size. They travel around the country. They're owned by individuals and groups that sponsor them and rent them out essentially for other groups to display, like we are doing here as part of our Veterans Day week celebrations. So this one in particular came from Wisconsin. We assembled it in a couple hours, put it together with the help of other veterans and civilians who came here to, like I told you the poignant story about the older lady that came to find her brother.
Tell me about that.
He was killed in action in Vietnam, I believe it was 1968. She had not seen his name before on the wall. She knew that the wall was coming, and we had invited folks that if they knew a relative that was on the wall, and they wanted to be part of the assembly process for that to show up here. So she was here that morning when the wall show came. She knew the panel, knew the line number. We pulled it off the truck. We laid the panel out in front of her. She found her brother's name, put her finger on it, and she helped carry the panel in, and it was assembled right here that afternoon.
You have so many stories of people's reverence, and those who have served and those who have not served, people who knew relatives, family, friends, loved ones who died in Vietnam. This war still really has a deep impact on America. Can you describe?
Extremely. So I was here the other day when a gentleman came in from North Carolina. He had 3 buddies that he knew at the time. He got a college deferment, went to college. His buddy he worked with all summer. He drove him to work all summer long. In the fall, he went off to college. His buddy went to Vietnam. He died. He came here, he found his name, and he was reminiscing about what that friend meant to him. And he knew that he had the luck of the draw a little bit. He told me this story about how he went to college and he was a very poor student. And he barely got through his freshman fall semester with a .86 grade point average.
Oh my.
.5 he would have been kicked out, and we would put automatically back into the draft and would have
College students back at that time exempt from the draft.
That's correct. So he had a deferment for college, but he had to maintain a certain grade point average. His was just 0.3% above what he had to do to get put back on the list and sent to Vietnam.
Wow.
He felt that that experience meant a whole lot to him, and whereas his buddy went to Vietnam and died, was killed.
Survivor's guilt, perhaps?
Yeah, I don't know. And he had another buddy who went to Vietnam and came back troubled. Never recovered from it. He had some drug addiction problems and just never overcame it. So the 3 of them, one was killed in action, one suffered the rest of his life, one ended up going on to live a fruitful life.
The example you cite is just one microcosm of how this war has affected our country. And you know, we never really talked much about post-traumatic stress in those days, in 1975. It's a relatively newer thing, but didn't it start with the legacy of Vietnam?
I'm sure it did.
And what this war did.
It was probably there before that. Nobody talked about it, nobody recognized it, nobody had diagnosed it. My father did not talk at all about the war. That was probably a symptom of the PTSD.
Your father served from 64 to 68?
He was 30-year Army retired, but in Vietnam he was there from 68 to 69.
Oh, excuse me. Okay.
9th Infantry Division, Dong Tam, way down in the Delta, south of Saigon, is the exact place. But his reminiscences were zero to the family. We never heard anything about his experience there. But I know he talked about that with his buddies in the American Legion and the VFW, who were fellow service members, that band of brothers, that, as it were, that talked all the time about their experiences.
Did he ever tell you about it towards, the end, or?
Yes, a little bit. He said that it was an experience that he, I don't want to say cherished, but was part of who he was. I don't know if he was trying to instill in me that spirit or whatever, because I was already in the Navy at that time. I was doing my own career. But he did tell me that it was an important part of his life and his experience, and whatever it was.
We're going to take a quick break and come back with more of this very special edition of History Through the Lens after this. Back with History Through the Lens, we're here at the Moving Wall, a tribute to the Vietnam Memorial that is on display here in Virginia Beach. Of course, that's as of this taping, but when this airs, the wall will be traveling on and moving to other locales. I'm joined by Dan Doyle. He is president of the Hampton Roads Council of Veterans Organizations, talking about Veterans Day and, of course, the Vietnam Memorial here. Let's go back to 1982, whenever the original wall was put forward, and it was the idea of a veteran, Jan Scruggs. And he said this in 1977 about his desire to see a Vietnam memorial. He said, quote, "No efforts can provide compensation, of course, to the Americans who made the ultimate sacrifice in Vietnam. For them, perhaps, a national monument is in order to remind an ungrateful nation of what it has done to its sons." Jan Scruggs, 1977. That last part is very powerful. He says, ungrateful nation for what all of us have done to those men and women.
Powerful.
What do you think when you hear that?
Well, I think it's important to remember the sacrifice. Without a tribute like this, I dare say we might not remember. The fact that this wall is a permanent structure in our nation's capital and that people can visit every day is testament to how important it is that we settle our differences about what we thought about it and say thank you and honor the sacrifice of those who willingly or otherwise went and served their country at a time of great turmoil, and maybe a war that wasn't all that well thought of at the time, but certainly in retrospect, it's gained some less hatred, I would say, than when I was younger and my father was there and came back from Vietnam. I know that personally.
What was your father's experience coming home? Do you mind sharing that?
Certainly, he was still gung-ho Army. There was no change to that. All his buddies that he was serving with at the time when he came back from Vietnam, we were in Japan. Everybody there was Vietnam veterans. The whole army that we knew was Vietnam veterans.
And this is 1969?
1975 by the time we were
okay.
in Japan from 72 to 77.
Got it.
So a couple years after he came back, we were transferred to Japan. Everybody there was Vietnam veterans. We didn't know anybody that wasn't. That was our whole experience. All the kids I knew that I grew up with, all my father's friends were all veterans, all families of veterans of the war.
So you were shielded in a sense by their point of view, at least.
Well, of course. I mean, that's the way parents are supposed to be, right? They
sure.
shield the kids from what they don't need to know, but you know, like young kids always were around them when they're doing what they're doing, and back then it was, you know, they did what they did and they talked about it and amongst themselves, and we overheard some of that stuff. So
because we knew whenever a lot of veterans came home how they were treated by, especially American pop culture at that time. There were no parades. Some were spat upon. I mean, it's heartbreaking how we treated them when they came home to our country.
It's despicable. Regardless of what you think about any war, the people that are on the battlefield and make the sacrifice should always be treated with respect and dignity. Those that didn't make it back from Vietnam are memorialized here for us to pay tribute all these years later on the 50th anniversary of the end of the war. And this year's focus has been exactly that. So we've spent the entire year this year focusing on the anniversary, the end of the war, and trying to instill in the public some knowledge or some facets of the experience, and hopefully do these folks right by doing that.
When you see the wall, you know, just black granite, and when I look down here and notice people watching, I see these brilliant reflections. It's like when you look at those names, and then you look at yourself, you see yourself looking back. I mean, there's a poignancy there, isn't there?
Well, the design of the wall was part of it, so that there was reflection. And a lot of the pictures, a lot of the vignettes or drawings that you see of experiences at the wall, you see reflections of the people that are reaching out to touch the names of fallen heroes. And at the ends of the walls, there are blank panels. They're meant to be blank so that you can look at yourself and compare maybe, and maybe get some sense of the experience that these folks had as coming back at you in the reflection. So it's uniquely designed, this whole idea of putting people's names on a wall. There's no other monument like this. Right? All 58,260 names of those that died are on this wall, starting in the corner with 1959. First two guys killed July of 1959. Both of them killed at the same time.
Were they killed in combat?
There's a little bit of story about it. They were there on their own volition. helping the Vietnamese against the Viet Cong that were in the area.
Mm-hmm.
They were in a hamlet, they were ambushed, they ran out the door, they were killed instantly, 2 of them. Their names are in the corner at the top row, all the way around. It ends in 1965. The apex beginning and the end all come together in one point, right there in the apex. The last guy to die was a Marine Corps helicopter pilot during the Mayaguez rescue attempt in 1975. He's the last name up there. So the first 2 guys and the last guy, first day, last day, meet in the middle right here.
Was there any specific reason why 1965 has the apex? Was that the height of our troop commitment in Vietnam?
1975.
Oh, 75.
75,
I think you said 65. Okay.
I might have. Sorry.
Okay.
about that.
So that was the end of
End
the
of
war,
it.
April 30th,
That's
whenever
correct.
we were leaving Saigon, for the fall of Saigon,
correct.
basically.
Well, actually, the war, so the official war, the end of the war, but the Mayaguez was a ship that was hijacked by the Vietnamese, Viet Cong, and the Marines tried to rescue the people, and he was shot down in a helicopter trying to do the rescue in 1975. I think it was May of 1975.
Well, when this wall went up in 1982, of course, this is one from '84, but we're talking about the original wall, after which this is patterned. We talk about the reflection, and you wonder, was the artist trying to get people to look at themselves and say, you too bear some kind of responsibility for...
Well, if that wasn't the intent, it certainly, in my mind, is what happens. I mean, when you stand there and you look at the names, you're looking right in your own eyes in the reflection.
They died for you.
Oh, look, okay, that's a good way to put it. Absolutely, they did.
I mean, I'm giving my own interpretation there. I don't know if that's accurate.
I believe that. All the veterans, all the heroes of this, all the wars are represented in Veterans Day. The culmination of this week here is focused on Vietnam, and this could be no more better representation than that effort. So,
especially in the 50th anniversary, and it's
Absolutely.
taken 5 decades to get people to come around and talk more favorably about not so much the war itself, but the sacrifice that these people gave.
well, I think more recent wars have had a better, if you will, political hue to them. Certainly, we think of the most recent wars in the past 20 years as probably, we think that maybe they're more heroic or more just, if you will, because we were maybe seeking retribution against those who attacked us, or whatever the
Something
real
tangible
cause.
that we
Yeah.
could see, that we thought, like, okay, I get why we're going to Afghanistan
Absolutely.
to get Osama bin Laden.
Absolutely.
Where this, it was kind of like, okay, what is communism? We don't want communism to take over the world. The domino theory
Sure.
under Eisenhower, and
And the history of all that, I mean, it's
it's-
complicated, of course,
very
but
complicated.
may I still submit that the purpose was righteous, to help others, just like we're trying to do in Ukraine these days without putting boots on the ground. The idea that we're still supporting democracies, however nascent or in danger they are, or wherever they are in the world.
This
It's
conversation,
just a different time, that's all.
different time. This conversation's fascinating. Let's take a very quick break, and we'll come back with more of this very special edition of History Through the Lens from the Virginia Beach Convention Center after this. Welcome back to this very special edition of History Through the Lens. I'm Tom Shad, here right with Dan Doyle, the president of the Hampton Roads Council of Veterans Organizations. I have to make sure I get that title correctly, so hence I'm reading it from my script.
I just say HRCVO.
But HRCVO, exactly. I know you want to acknowledge a lot of people who made this display possible and this Veterans Day possible, because it's always a special parade in Virginia Beach, and especially with the 50th anniversary of the end of the Vietnam War.
Yes, sir. So this year's Veterans Day celebration, the entire year has been focused on the anniversary, the 50th anniversary of the end of the war in 1975. One of the groups that's part of the HRCVO is one that's focused entirely on the missing in action from that war, Mission POW MIA. They are the co-sponsors of this year's parade, and they brought in the guest speaker for the luncheon, which will happen tomorrow. But they sponsored the wall, and with the city's help, the mayor and the mayor's Committee on Veterans Affairs, they put together this event in here to help us celebrate. The wall was paid for by them, and the mayor got us the convention center to use here, so we could do this.
It's very impressive, and I know that Wavy has done a story of the wall coming here, putting it up, and I know we'll be covering Veterans Day tomorrow.
Yes.
On again, as of this taping, which is Tuesday, November 11th. But when this airs, the wall will be somewhere else, and that was the reason why this replica was designed, so everybody could see it.
I know that probably 30 years ago, my father, Walt, was traveling around and came to his town in Dover, Delaware. And he told me all about it back then. And I said, I didn't think much about it. I'd seen the real one in D.C., so I said, what's the point? Now I understand. When I was been here over the last 3 or 4 days and seen people visiting, and I helped them as a docent trying to find names, and they were able to reach out and touch that name and take an etching of it and take it back with them. They were overcome with emotion in some cases. That made me understand why it is important to have this available so that they can travel around and other people can see it at their, not everybody has the opportunity to go to Washington, D.C. and spend a day there looking at this thing. So it's a local thing.
And it's still very powerful.
I
noticed when people come in here to view it, they are still very hushed reverence.
Absolutely.
When they come here.
We've tried to set that atmosphere too with a little bit lower lighting and telling them not to have their phones going off and all that while they're here, because it is a reverent place. And you can see the photos that are along the wall. Those are still the missing in action that the families of the missing in action are hoping someday to get resolution on. Just last Friday, we returned a missing aviator from right here in Virginia Beach who was shot down in 1968.
That's right, we covered that.
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
right here. I was personally part of that as a color guard at the airport when his coffin came off the airplane, and his family went out to touch the coffin as a last gesture of his immortality, if you will, and finalizing his whole life from war back to America and home.
So many people seeing this weren't even born when we left Vietnam and when the war was over. There's definitely a different understanding among the generations. What is the message you want to bring, especially to younger people, about this wall and about the American military in general?
Well, life is about sacrifice. I mean, it doesn't matter what you're doing. If you're riding a bus or you have to walk, it's a sacrifice.
Sure.
But going to war for your country can be the ultimate sacrifice. These folks on this wall made that ultimate sacrifice for the glory and the greatness of our country. Whatever you think about that particular happening and why it was going on, the idea that people, whether they were conscripted or volunteered, they went and served. Not many people do that anymore voluntarily. So the idea that you put your life at risk for the greater glory of your country, other than God, there can't be much else that's worth dying for.
And how many of these people did not want to be there?
Who knows? I don't know.
But they went.
Yes.
That's your message, the fact that you
Absolutely.
have to aspire to things greater than yourself.
You should. You should do that, whatever it is. But this is the ultimate example right here of sacrifice. That should be something that we respect at a minimum. And what we try to do as part of Veterans Day is to honor and celebrate it.
What do you see for the future of our country? After you see this display and how people respond to it, I mean, do you think that society in general shares the reverence that you describe?
I hope they do. They should. I think more people do than maybe during this particular era of our history. I think they're more patriotic, if you will, thinking folks. I think people are more reverent and respectful of sacrifice like this than they were back in the 70s.
I would agree with that, actually, because, yeah, I was a little boy then, but I can see the difference.
Absolutely. You could see it on TV, you know, just the total disrespect. But now I think it's better. So if it gets better incrementally over the years, that's a good thing. And if this is helpful in that regard, or parades or whatever we do to honor our veterans, that's a good thing.
All right, we're going to leave it at that. Dan Doyle, thank you for joining us today in the special edition of History Through the Lens at the Moving Wall, a exhibit here at the Virginia Beach Convention Center honoring Veterans Day. I'm Tom Shad, and remember, we make history every day.